Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jeep Journals, and today I want to talk about name calling. Name calling is about a step away from narcissism. Name calling is something that comes from a place of entitlement. Name calling is something that comes from bullying. Simply put, if we're able to look at someone with enough disdain to call them something in a way to try to agitate them, we're basically throwing a tantrum. And I know it because I've also carried out these types of tantrums in the past, both as a toddler, as a young adult, as a full-grown, by definition of the current standards, adult. And it's something that comes to mind even when I'm watching different shows and listening to dialogue that's happening in heated situations. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let's say, for an example, we watch any of the cases that have happened recently on the news today where there have been disappearances, murders, abductions, shootings, poisonings, etc., and so forth. Even the weather itself we can look at and call certain things because we are throwing a tantrum. So, why do I want to talk about this topic? To me, I believe it's a very important topic because recently I noticed that some people weren't really thinking with consideration about the things they are saying. Just to give you an example, I say for an example a lot, don't I? You have to give examples. A lot of these things are happening, and without something that can put something into your frame of reference that you might be able to associate with, well, we don't have a connection on this channel. On this particular channel, what I'm trying to do is bridge a community that's not afraid to talk about bullying, that's not afraid to have a full conversation, that's not afraid of spirituality, that's not afraid of growing in peace and harmony. So, in this particular case, I'd like to give an example of somebody who was using a phrase out of context and essentially calling me a name at the same time. Very recently, just to add a little bit of background to this example so that we're able to follow on the same page. Very recently, if you listen to some of the backstory, which are shared in segments throughout my past releases on this channel itself, if you listen to some of the backstories, you'll know that my family has been touched by different levels of addiction. And in this particular element, when you share information about this, some people will reach out to talk more about this situation because not everyone is able to openly communicate about addiction. People are afraid of it, ashamed of it, repulsed by it, judge it in all kinds of different ways, and that's okay. That's not up to us to figure out. It's just up to us to perceive it. Because once we acknowledge that something is happening, then we can learn to make more informed decisions. So, in this particular circumstance, somebody reached out to compliment me on sharing some insight about some difficulties I was going through with my family. And they also had a little bit of concern with what if you're sharing this and people are talking negatively about it? Well, if people are talking, then at least people are thinking about the situation rather than being oblivious and just kind of entertaining themselves into their own submission for the world of addiction that we live in. What was that song? Material Boy by some guy or some girl, Material Girl. It was one of those names of those songs, you know, and if that song or even the purposeful misdirection of the artist at first got you upset, I apologize. And at the same time, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm trying to tell you a story. Are you still listening to the story? The story is about name calling. And in this element of name calling, I'm tying together with it spirituality and presence of mind. And at the same time, I'm also telling you an example in ways that aren't really portraying exactly where this story materialized, so that we can kind of hear an example, knowing that it happened to me, without being able to point fingers at who it happened from. Everyone's welcome to their own guesses, but I'm going to tell you, each one of us who recognizes these traits has done the exact same thing, whether it was as a toddler, whether it was as an advanced age adult. The whole purpose of what this topic is so that we can have a conversation, peaceful conversation. So, you know that I've stopped and started. Let me try to run through the entire example without any side dialogue, and then we'll revisit the side dialogue. So, in this situation, someone reached out to me to tell me they were grateful for me sharing the story that I was going through with a relative who is facing some addiction-related decisions that or outcomes from the decisions that they made while following those voices in their mind. All of us has voices in our mind. All of us have voices in our mind, both on the good side and the bad side. And by good and bad, I'm not the judge of it, but I can tell you, when I use certain words and when I follow through with certain actions that are in my mind, I know whether or not they make someone else feel good. So, how do I know? Well, the proof is in the pudding. You know, you'll know their work by their actions. The fruitful vines will show the evidence of the hard work that's happening. And in contrast, you'll also know when you're hurting and killing one another's great mood in just the same way. It's not that difficult. So this person basically was complimenting me on sharing a story about the addiction-related situations or outcomes from the addiction-related decisions that someone in my family was making. And what came of that was a conversation where they started sharing with me some of the insight that was happening with their own relative, which naturally that's the case usually for me to be talking with someone about addiction, either they themselves or someone else they know is going through it. But in all cases, we're talking together to try and at least help someone express their emotions to somebody about what they're going through, to release attention, to release the discomfort that it certainly brings about when you're facing something alone. So, and in a lot of cases, people can be talking with groups about stuff and still be facing something alone because the people in the groups won't really care to participate with the other person, even if they're receiving help or a listening ear from someone about any given subject. I'm sorry I keep going off on the side notes. Maybe the side notes and the example need to just go the way they are. And if you can pay attention and follow along, great. If not, you might be a little anxious. If I'm causing your anxiety, I don't know what to say because I'm heading off to a wilderness area to walk in nature and to enjoy this beautiful day that you see through the sunroof here, the dual pane sunroof of this amazing vehicle. You can see my new stickers that I've put up. You can see all kinds of things while you ride along on this journey with me on my channel. Mostly this channel is focused on wellness and conservation with a strong emphasis on having being defined by wildlife itself. The very reason that you and I have connected on this page, I think. As a fellow lover of nature, as a fellow lover, you and I understand what joy is. And so you and I are able to hear this story and know, man, this story is going to be a good one. I already probably know the punchline because I've been there before, but in a different circumstance. How did you deal with this? That's what people want to know. So I'm going to tell you the example, continue telling you the example. This person heard what I was going through because they expressed concern for the things I was experiencing, and then they poured out some of the information that was happening with their family and mentioned to me that they really hadn't gotten back to me about certain things because they just didn't have time. So I reiterated as confirmation, there's a dinging. I reiterated, as I often do, that we have time for whatever we want to prioritize in life. It's just oftentimes we are in a frequency, in a vibrational frequency, where we're either following a path that doesn't serve us, or we're just oblivious. And to walk around oblivious is to walk around in a programmed manner where we do the same things over and over and over. Isn't that similar to addiction? So this person, confirmation. I don't know if you're hearing the dinging, ding, 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 isn't doing the same thing over and over like addiction. I try to mix it up. I do all kinds of different things, experience it in different weathers, different circumstances, under different levels of pressure. And I'm just getting started. I'm not phased. I'm passing by personalized license plates as I'm driving. I'm scanning the entire scene, recognizing when I'm hitting insects and when I'm not. I'm recognizing whether we're seeing birds or hawks or anything fly over. Anyway, actually, I'm about to pass a bird. There's a vulture on this light pole. I don't know if it'll show up. There it was. Ding! Ding, 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 ding. So you're listening. You're tuning in. You're understanding that I'm talking about things like law of attraction, spiritualism, peace, and I'm giving examples about the topics that some of our fathers just simply do not wish to talk about. Name calling. So this person talks to me about their situation. I listen. I express concern because I am concerned with any story where I hear that someone or something is suffering. And I try to help, just lend an ear. Listen. I listened. I didn't operate my voice while I was listening. So, listen to the whole story, and then I was presented with some kind of information about why this person hadn't gotten in touch with me, except for in this instance. And they presented to me a lot of obstacles, which we all pretty much have, and cited facts that were no longer factual. In other words, they were still presenting information from the past, saying, well, I didn't do something because of this thing that happened way back then, so I expressed my feelings. I said, it feels like you're doing fine. It feels like you have your answer, and it feels like confirmation. And it feels like we're still not really able to, you and I, communicate fully both directions because of a level of anxiety. And that anxiety to me is clear when you start talking with somebody about any of these topics and they can't remember what the subject was. The subject is name calling. They can't remember what the subject was, and they continue to try to change the topic and never ever recenter on the actual problem at hand. I'm passing it's a dead house cat. I seldom see wildlife on this loop. I used to see wildlife on this loop about 10 years ago. All the time. Roadkills. And live wildlife. But even though that's the same story, that's a different story for a different time. So this person, I touched on a nerve where the agitation came out, and this person dismissed me with a message, "Bye, Felicia." Now, if ever anybody knows what that term is, "Bye, Felicia," I'll give you a moment to Google it if you want to look at it at the same time. "Bye, Felicia." "Bye, Felicia" is from a hit movie that happened on some specific day of the week. And in that hit movie, there is an addict who will come over and try to trade services for feeding their need for conveniences, their need for entertainment. And this particular person's entertainment of choice was some kind of illicit substance that can cause mental harm. So this person was using an illicit service, an illicit substance that can cause mental illness. There's a lot of traffic here, by the way, so I'm trying to keep it focused on the traffic. There's a person known as Felicia from this hit movie, who is dismissed by some people who are like, we don't want your substance abuse kind talking with us and trying to trade services with us. We don't want you around. Bye, Felicia. We're not going to help you. You're not ready for help. Anytime we help you, you're going to turn that around and waste the good that should have come from it. So, bye, Felicia. The thing about this person telling me, bye, Felicia, is that they're literally calling me by something that we both were discussing right then, addiction. Do you find it crass, uncouth, or insensitive for someone to have called me, bye, Felicia, to dismiss me from the conversation after they themselves called to ask for me to listen to their woes? This is what we talk about when we talk about energy. Negative energy, positive energy. People will share energy with you. And if you reciprocate it in the same manner, you'll drain yourself just as fast as any addict will drain themselves of their entire life's savings. Because each pacification, confirmation, each, if that's even a word, pacification, each attempt to pacify the ego diminishes the spirit all the more. And it makes it easier for us to bye, Felicia, the next person without hesitation, even in the midst of them actually asking for help. Do any of you think that just because I'm smiling here and super energetic that I'm always happy? We all go through challenging situations. And if you really look at some of the stuff I've shared recently, the things that I'm going through are quite challenging. And so for someone else to hear my story, even a part of it, without interrupting and without trying to immediately present judgment and some kind of theoretical solution, well, here's what I would do. If that person was sitting next to you trying to jump out of the car, I would have pushed him out. That's what one of my associates told me as I was telling them the story about how recently when I had an addict in the car with me, they tried to jump out of my moving vehicle. I even had a witness in the back seat who doesn't ever really share the story in any way that was meaningful enough to bring about additional help. So I had an addict right next to me who was trying to jump out of my moving vehicle on a roadway that was really close to a freeway, much like the one that I'm traveling on right now, where the speed limit is about 70 miles an hour. And only this was further out in the country, so the speed limit was even greater than that. So this person's trying to jump out of the car, hitting me, doing all kinds of weird stuff, an addict. And I didn't even emotionally respond because that would require judgment. I'm not judging anybody who is sick. People who are sick, they're sick. What can we do? There's one example that was talked about in the past about unconditional love, where we wouldn't just say, bye, Felicia, to someone who is sick. And so what I did was try my best with the resources that were provided to me to bring the ill to the place where they were going to get treated. And I succeeded at that. At this particular case, the rest of the verdict is still out in terms of what's going to happen next and who's going to do what. There's this gigantic truck in front of me throwing smoke screen. Did you see all of that? There's a hostility that comes out when you start touching on subjects. I know you've listened to other stories where you've heard the engines revving in the distance. You could call it coincidence. I can call it, hey, I'm not going to judge it. You know, each one of us is entitled to present our own responses. Usually the time when we exacerbate those responses into physically harming one another is when we choose to fight. When I didn't choose to fight this person who was throttling my arm, I didn't even feel the blows. I didn't feel the hits. And I didn't escalate the situation even further, which could very well have escalated into something that we all might have been able to learn from on quite a different level going forward. Instead, on this channel, we learn about trying to deal with things in a peaceful or as peaceful as possible way that will allow everyone the opportunity to live another day in peace. Isn't that what we want right now? Isn't that why we're listening to this story and going, man, I can't believe for 20 minutes I've been listening to this story. I don't really understand. Still don't understand. We're talking about name calling. I'll refocus the conversation over and over because I recognize you, and it's because I recognize myself. I can look in the mirror and go, I kept changing the subject for so long that I felt uncomfortable about what it is I was trying to do in life. I felt uncomfortable about who I was becoming until I was comfortable, until I was at peace. Isn't it great to be at peace on a regular basis? So, with the connections we've made throughout time, good or bad, we have solidified repeating sequences where we're going to talk to different people from our past because that's just the nature of time. There are people who you have made profound impacts on, just like people have made profound impacts on me. There are people who we look forward to seeing and talking with throughout time. All of my relatives, for both sides of the direct genetic family that I have, I think are amazing. I know some of you are even watching this video right now. The interesting thing, though, is that some who used to participate regularly have found other channels that are more pleasing. When we please ourselves, are we pleasing the spirit or the ego? When we please the ego, we tend to not be able to have conversations that are clear, that are effective, and or that are meaningful. When we please the ego, we like to opt for the meaningful conversations. In other words, we just like to see the meme. Give me the Cliff's Notes. I used to do homework for so many people because it was fast. For me, it was fast. It was fast for me to resolve an issue, to come up with something creative, to do the research. And I came up during the era where computers started to come out. I had the internet. I knew how to use it right from the beginning. Web searches. It was pretty easy to do homework after a certain point in time. After a certain point in time, it was much easier than when we only had the library and when we only had what was in our own head to begin with. Now, I don't even hardly have to know anybody's phone number. There are very few phone numbers I actually know anymore because my phone stores them. That's something I don't have to remember all the time. So I've relied on certain things to free up my mental abilities to give me the processing power to bring to you the things that I bring to you regularly now. I still focus on wildlife and nature. I'm going to disconnect this because we're not even going fast enough to be cited for speeding. I'm not speeding, haven't been. And I want to reiterate how important it is to think about name calling. In some spiritual texts, and for me, I was brought up with the Bible, so I'm going to reference something that I think we can directly correlate with the Bible here, just in case you are wondering, where's this information coming from? Why are you talking about it this way? Well, I'm talking about it this way because I have the faith that this channel is being listened to. I know that it's absolutely helping hundreds of thousands of people. It's helping people globally, and it helps people like me who have people tell me, bye Felicia, whenever I want to talk about some of the things that I recognize might be invading our circles of friendship. So, someone told me, bye Felicias. They basically told me, bye crack addict, bye meth addict, bye substance abuser. The funny thing about name calling is it takes one to know one. And whatever my level of addiction is something that is quite individual and independent from whatever levels of addiction someone else might be experiencing. So, I say that with certainty, which is why I say, well, I'm not the one who's going to judge it. I'm not judging it. You know, I really am not the judge of this. This is just a circumstance. All of these circumstances that I've created for myself by choosing my actions in the past have resulted in, as I've mentioned, current situations, current conversations with people. And so, as I recognize that all I'm doing is backtracking, you ever seen that? I don't remember what the show, My Name is Earl or something like that. You ever seen that show where this guy's backtracking through all the wrongs in his life? He basically is having and rehaving conversations with people that he needs to have conversations with. Some of us might be you, right there. Right there, I can see you. Some of us need to have conversations, and we're avoiding the conversation because there's this little kid over here next to me waving, so I'm going to wave. Just to see their faces pressed up against the window. Maybe I can show you. Oh, man. They just moved. So, if they do it again, I'll show you because this is totally worth it. They pressed their whole face against the window. Their nose was smushed up against the glass and everything. It was great. Then again, it's YouTube. Maybe I was prevented from showing this because... Is this video made for kids? Are kids shown in it? Nope. I'm just a regular guy having a regular conversation that is regularly glossed over and dismissed as quickly as we would dismiss a substance abuse participant, someone suffering from substance abuse, as quickly as we would dismiss someone suffering from our doorstep, just like that. Someone suffering at the curbside, asking for help. As quickly as we would dismiss someone right outside of a building forged to showcase these teachings of peace, someone begging outside for help. As quickly as we would dismiss someone, we don't have to call them names and say, bye, Felicia. That's just my take on name calling. To tie it to the Bible, like I was starting to say before I made the turn into this parking lot where I parked and I'm about to go take my walk. Imagine, and I'm not saying that you or I are God, but imagine that we're created in the image of a creator. And imagine one of the comments, one of the rules, if you're given a book that just happened to have 10 rules in it. Imagine one of the rules said, don't take God's name in vain. Don't use it in anger. Don't use the Lord's name in anger. Don't use God's name in haste. Imagine you heard that, and imagine you and I are created in the image of a creator. And imagine if I said, my name is Ray, by the way. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for commenting. Imagine if someone looked at me and said, hey, Ray, you do this every time, Ray. There's an energy. And that energy that's put into my name was put in a certain way. You see, we got some participants in this video. The name that was put in anger is just the same as saying, bye, Felicia. The way that we say something, the way that we intend something, it doesn't really normally and necessarily weigh on the other person's heart. It might weigh on the ego, weighs on my ego when people tell me whatever they've told me. I've been called a lot of things for a lot less than listening to someone's story patiently and with concern. I've been called a lot more for a lot less. And that definitely torments the ego. The good thing is, I don't really feed the ego. I do my best to feed the spirit, and I do my best to learn that the ego is there to help maybe chime in when safety, self-preservation, and all those things come into play. Which is why I often talk about wellness and conservation and how they go hand in hand. If I can't sit in a vehicle with somebody without knowing they're not going to try to jump out of the vehicle or punch me in the face or argue with me in a way that escalates my heart rate and causes me less focus on the traffic around me while I'm operating the vehicle to provide the safety that I can for everyone who's in the vehicle, I'm simply not going to want to subject myself to that. So I'm not going to say, bye, Felicia. What I'm going to say is, hey guys, we have a serious topic to consider here. And that topic is that some of the judgments that are being made, some of the things that we're carrying in our own heart are carrying forth in ways that are spilled out onto other people, possibly without consideration. I bet you the person who said, bye, Felicia, never once thought that they were calling me something that might be offensive, derogatory, slanderous, hostile, demeaning, or otherwise. And then at the same time, well, sometimes people see a conversation full circle because it becomes a topic of relevance. Whether this topic becomes relevant among our fathers or not is going to be up to the jury, as I said earlier. Some of these things are still up to the jury in terms of how the outcome is going to be manifested. But as I said in a letter I wrote really recently, lately I've just been letting go, what's the next word that comes to mind when you think about that? Is there a judgment when you think about that word? Do you think, oh man, there goes that guy again? Or do you think, oh, I hate hearing that subject? The energy that we express, even in our thoughts, is what manifests the realities that are around us. The energy that we carry forward into life with one another is probably the energy that we carry forward into death. Whether we believe in that also talked about afterlife or not. I say also talked about, however, we know it's a challenging conversation for many of our participants. We know it. Why is it so difficult to have these conversations with one another about name calling, narcissism, any of these things that we all know, that we all have done? It shouldn't be difficult to have the conversations. It should not be far from your mind when you're thinking about the word of peace. You want that word of peace all the time. It shouldn't be difficult to click on subscribe. It shouldn't be difficult to click on like. It shouldn't be difficult to even just click on comment. Whether you don't want to subscribe or click on like or share the video, it should not be difficult to participate in a new way than the way that our fathers and mothers have been teaching for quite some time. The way we've been resonating energies with one another can be greatly improved upon. Speaking of greatly improved upon, I'm filming this with my new mobile device, and its camera is absolutely superior to the previous mobile device that I was using. I'm going to be selling all of my camera gear. I used to present pictures. I've got things that are being showcased in upcoming museum displays. I've got pictures that are hanging in hotels, but that doesn't pay the bills. I've even been told in front of someone who was asking me if I was a photographer or not. I've even been told to the group by the person standing with me who invited me to this group outing. They said, in my place, they said, nope, he's not a photographer. And they basically just said I was a network technician, which that career had ended for me. And taking pictures of wildlife has been something I've done out of joy for my lifetime ever since I started being able to see nature in Big Bend National Park in 1993. Prior to that, I fondly remember watching Wild America on TV every weekend, without question, religiously. Wildlife, that was my religion. In a way, getting out into nature is still quite a joy to me. It's like walking into church. When I walk into church and see people who are able to have a communication, knowing that it's a great day, that's how I see people on the trails in most cases. There are a lot of people who will dismiss me when I wave hi. They'll just basically walk by without even saying anything. I'd rather they said, bye, Felicia, to show that they were anxious and agitated or upset with the world. And I'd rather them let that anger out at me if they want to. That's fine. I'm not going to absorb it. My ego, it's there for when the time comes. But my spirit is what I protect fully. And by that, what I mean is health is wealth. Enjoy your day. Listen to some new music. Make your own music. Write a poem, like a real poem. Try to do it where it pleases whoever it's being written about, where it uplifts, and where it at least carefully deconstructs what it is that's being called out if we're calling out something. So again, if I have someone sitting next to me in the passenger seat who's actively trying to jump out of the car, or who's looking at me while I'm driving, they're like staring at me. I recently saw a video on what do you do if someone's staring at me? And they showed two big guys, like one big guy across the street, and he had his group around him, and just one solo big guy who's like, I can fight that guy. Never considering the group. It's a video made for viewership, so it's got all these, hundreds of thousands of views. It's like, what do you do if someone's staring at you? Well, the first thing to do is not assume that they're staring at you for some reason that you think you know. What if they think they know you? Hey, is that so-and-so? Is that Ray? Is he that guy who listened to me way back when I was having that story to share with him about my family member? Is he that person who showed up and helped me to clean up the aftermath of some of the mess that I left behind? Is he that person that I always keep asking to help, but I've never helped him? Well, that's okay. I don't know what they were looking at me for if I'm in that same situation. Maybe they're looking at me because I dated their sister. Maybe they're looking at me because they really do hate my face. But I'm going to find something when I look at that person and go, wow, I really like that, whatever. I like that team, whatever shirt they're wearing. I like that brand. We're all friends, waiting to understand how we can help one another. And the main reason we look at anyone dismissively enough to say, bye, Felicia, is because there is an element in those same texts of peace that comes to kill, steal, and destroy. The first and last bits of evidence that that person is in your midst, wreaking havoc, is when you find that all of those things are being destroyed all those relationships, all of those friendships, all of that is being destroyed without your participation. In other words, if we're okay letting it all go and just watching TV and never again having lunch with those people who we said that we would chill out and have lunch with, if we're okay with that, that's okay. There's plenty of time, theoretically, in the afterlife for us to figure out who's going to be having more fun and who's not. Again, I'm not here to talk about that. All these things are conceptual as far as you might know me or as far as I might know you. And at the same time, what if it's not? What if my credibility that I'm giving to that higher power is that I'm not disrespecting it enough to go, bye, Felicia, I'm not even disrespecting it. I am seeing things that I believe are observations worth quantifying and also conversing over. I am seeing enough things to help us to go, name calling. That's one of the simpler things. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. So simple. What if I'm calling you by a name? What if I'm calling the thing I'm eating by a name? What if I'm talking down to even the very liquid that I'm drinking? So I hope you take this, all of you, and think on it. This is my message that I share with you in ways that I know you can understand. Even a toddler can see someone, even a pet can see someone who is not angry in the room. And imagine you're having a discussion and I'm talking like this with a little bit of urgency. And imagine someone else is just off their rocker, yelling, screaming, throwing things. Where do you think the pet's going to go for shelter, for protection? Is it going to run behind my legs or is it going to run behind the legs of the person who's destroying things? All of these things, all of these bits of evidence you know in your heart as examples that I have gone through because that's why I'm telling them to you. The imagery that you're receiving, the people who have sat next to me, who have sat in the back seat, who have remained passive, the people who are remaining passive in this very group right now, they might need to see a different example of conversation. They might want to hear something from you. So click on the comments, share your experience if you can, if you'd like. Write me directly. There's some reason why you feel like participating with me. It's not just so you can say, bye, Felicia, and dismiss me like as if I'm just some addict in need at your doorstep. I'm not at your doorstep. You have to come find me. I'm going out into nature to enjoy my day and just wait to see what the next weeks bring. It's going to be pretty fantastic. Thanks again for watching this channel. Thanks again for making what it is with now over 200 subscribers. Imagine the next time I backtrack and watch this whole video, how many subscribers there'll be. I can't even tell you. I can tell you that watching the statistics on this page, I know people are watching the same subject. They're watching this material. They want to see it. We all want to see truth. How do we pick what's truth and what's not? The question is it up to us to judge? Or is it up to us to either actually commit to hearing someone and teaming up with someone who's at least on the same page, who's at least going in the same direction? Someone asked me once, they said, I don't know if I can pray because I've done so many bad things. I don't even know if I can where to begin to ask for praying. You just start. Praying is the same thing as, for some industries, meditation. Meditation is thinking. Meditation is thinking without earbuds. Meditation is thinking without other external stimuli. Meditation is paying to the signs like the chiming of this thing overhead. Meditation is paying attention to when the birds pass overhead and hearing this person say, over and over, this is what's happening. If I was talking about synchronicity, if I was talking about the law of attraction, if I was talking about religion, if I was talking about belief, if I was talking about peace, if I was talking about the mind of the egocentric person is quite agitated and it can't hear all of these things as easily. It's up to you to calm your own self down It's not up to the people who incarcerate you after you go so far as to threaten somebody and or actually actively harm somebody and or actually take away someone's belongings or life. It's not up to the people who put you into the incarceration element. It's not up to the priests who come by to give you those last rites. It's up to you to decide if you're going to have a good day or not. I'm going to have a great day. I wish you the greatest day. Blessings, peace, love, and all that old school stuff.